Jesus is saying, hey, you're going to have storms in this life, but in me, you have the power to not be hurried amidst your busyness, to not be anxious amidst your storm, to sleep as I do, to lay to rest your anxiety and your fear as I model to you in this boat in the midst of your storm. He spoke love first. He calmed the storm. And then he spoke truth. Hey, friend, you don't have to be anxious in the middle of your storm. You can put to rest, lay to sleep these fears, these anxieties, this internal conversation saying you're not good enough, you're never going to measure up. You don't have to let that have life. You can live your life in me and lay to bed those fears as I model to you sleeping in this storm. I believe every single person has a ministry. Ministry isn't just for preachers and it's not just for pastors. It's the way you shine the light that God gave you through His Spirit in all spaces that He's trusted you to walk. That means you on your college campus. That means you at your corporate job. That means you in high school. That means you with your friends at the bar or the restaurant. That means you wherever you are. You have the responsibility to shine God's light in that space, and you get the chance to. Friend, you are beautiful, you are worthy, and you are made to shine. And how are we to? I've been doing the Single Not Incomplete Bible study, and it's been so fun, but I've kind of missed just like talking to y'all as things come up. I was talking with someone the other day, and we were saying like, there's actually a lot, like if I have an idea, I'm like, okay, is this going to be a podcast episode for someone I'm going to interview? Is this going to be a podcast episode for My Heart to Yours Thursday? Is this going to be an Instagram reel? Is this going to be a book chapter? Is this going to be a next book idea? Like all the ideas I have, it's like, blah. And I've missed this avenue. Just, I love doing the Single Not Incomplete Bible study with you guys, but I miss just talking because this is actually so helpful for me. Someone once told me, you know what an author is struggling with by what their last book was about, or you know what they used to struggle with based off of what they wrote about previously, because you tend to write from the things that you personally have walked through. And because that's where you see God really the most in your life. You know what I mean? It's like you're able to, your messes are in your messages. And so for me, this My Heart to Yours Thursday, I'm so grateful for it because it holds me accountable to what am I walking through right now, God? And like, what do I need to shine your light and your love into the spaces of these areas that I'm struggling with? And boy, does that list never end. We were at church the other day and our pastor was like, my father once told me, Andy, it's Andy Stanley, he's my preacher. Andy, if you preach from your weakness, you will never run out of content. And boy, is that true. I think it's the only reason 4 years later, I've just never run out of ideas for a podcast episode, even when I wasn't doing interviews. This is make me sound not so great, but like I always have issues, you know, like there's never something I'm not issued with or challenged with or struggling with. And so the past 4 years, it really hasn't been that hard to come out with content every Sunday because there's always an issue in my life, something I'm always struggling with. And by the grace of God, His grace covers me and I'm able to learn something with, hopefully shine some light with you. But I'll say recently, the reason I wanted to kind of go rogue and not be on and do this episode versus like a continuing with the devotional, which we're going to pick back up next week. But boy, have I been struggling with just being busy recently. And I've always been a busy person. I like being busy. I tell people that when they're like, how are you? You look so busy. I'm like, yeah, but I like it. I get really sad when I'm not busy. In college, you know, I was like training for half marathons and marathons, but also on the tennis team. So my day looked like I'd get up at 3:30. I'd go work out for about an hour until 4:30. And then I was building a network marketing business. So I'd like queue up my reach outs to reach out to people to do sales with from 4:30 to 5:30, but I've waits at 5:30, sometimes 6, and then have weights, sometimes conditioning. Then I'd go to class for a few hours, and then I'd go to practice for 2 hours. And then I'd come back, do homework, go back to like lab or something, and then I'd go run again. So I'd be up from like 3:30 to 9 o'clock is when I'd go to bed. And I loved that. I loved that. And I remember when in college, when I would get injured and a lot of my day wasn't happening because I couldn't work out, I'd get literally so sad. And it's almost as if I'm such an energetic person. All that energy I use working out to get out of my body, it went into my brain, and I just started analyzing my entire life. And that never really led anywhere great. So all that to say, I like being busy. I think a lot of us like being busy. I think busyness can be used as an idol in our life. We brag about how busy we are. You know, we think that we are only as valuable as the amount of meetings on our calendar, or as the amount of requests coming in, or the amount of people that are asking things of us, or the amount of things that we have on our to-do list or we have on our schedule. And if all of those are gone, we associate our importance and our significance in life with the amount of requests coming in for us, or how tired we are at the end of the day. It's like busyness is this crown we wear. And recently, like last week, I had this moment where work has been so busy. And I was telling my mom, I was like, Mom, it's gotten to the point, there's just times I'm like, this is unmanageable. I don't know. Like, honestly, it's like there were moments I was like, God, yes, I was talking to my mom, but then I was praying. I was like, God, I feel called to do this podcast. I feel called to write books. The corporate job you have me in right now, at times I don't have enough energy. And I'm someone that I have a lot of energy. It's like I don't have enough in me. Just because it's a season where there's sometimes 8, 9, 10 meetings a day that I'm running. And then I get on and run my podcast. And then I have a book coming out in September. And I also have like a relationship that means so much to me. And I don't want to be like dead for by the time I see him, and my friends and my family. And I was like, God, I can't do this all. Have you ever felt that? You know, like, have you ever felt like, God, I can't do this all. I had a wedding last weekend, and it was a family wedding. It was so fun. It was like our first family wedding, which means grandma is on the dance floor, and I love the dance floor. Actually, my stress fracture flared back up because of how much I danced with my grandma on that dance floor. And that day, like, everybody was out and about, and I was working, and I had so many meetings that day. And I remember before my like 7:30 in the morning meeting, because I was working with a client that lives in like China or something, I started crying. And I was like, God, I'm so tired. And all I want to do is be with my family right now. Like, I don't want to be doing this. And I was really struggling with that, like struggling with, okay, I have to do this. Like, this is something I'm obligated to do, but I don't feel like it. And I just feel so tired and so busy and so rushed, because the reality of it is oftentimes it's not the amount of things we have on our calendar that freak us out. It's the internal dialogue around what's on our calendar that's zapping our energy. It's like, it's not really that meeting that's such a lift on your day. It's how you feel about that meeting 6 hours before the meeting that's making you exhausted, because you compile that and you compile that. And it's not the things that we're actually doing. It's the way we're thinking and feeling about the things that we're doing that affect us and impact us way after and way before doing the thing that we're doing. You know, it's like the nerves you have at 6 a.m. for the meeting that's at 4 p.m. Or it's the anxiety you have around the conversation you're having later that night, but it's only lunchtime that day. But it carries with you, and it slowly is just like killing you over time. And it's so funny because I literally posted about something on my Instagram, like, busy doesn't mean rushed. And that day I turned on Caleb, and they were talking about busy doesn't mean hurried. And just because you have so much in your day doesn't mean you're hurried. Hurried is a choice. Busy is a lot of times just the nature of life. But to be hurried is a choice. Busyness is the external storm. It's the external battles in our day. It's the meetings we really don't have to say if we show up to or not. We have to show up to them. It's showing up for your family. It's providing in that certain way. It's having that conversation. Busy is oftentimes just, that's gonna be required of us in this life. Jesus was busy, man. He was busy. He was healing people left and right. I was reading something. It was like people were just, it was nonstop healing. Like he had to literally hide himself to prevent people from coming up and asking more of him. He was busy, but he wasn't rushed. One of my favorite preachers, Lisa Harper, says Jesus had a 3-mile-an-hour ministry. That boy was walking everywhere. If I was tasked with like saving the world, I would probably be going at least 6.7 miles an hour from place to place. You know what I mean? Like a light jog. I would be going a light jog, probably working up a little bit of a sweat because I'm like, I got to get here. I got to get there, but not Jesus. Jesus walked everywhere. Because yes, he was busy. Yes, he had a purpose. Yes, he had a lot on his to-do list. Yes, God tasked him with a lot, but he didn't rush it. And it made me think, why? How? And yes, he's the Son of God, but everything Jesus did, he did to show us something. He did to model us something. So how was Jesus able to be busy but not be rushed? And for so long, I looked at that. I preached on this earlier to a group of high schoolers, but like, you know, he took time out of his day. He set intention for his day. And I believe in that. I believe in taking time out of your day. Like Mark talks about early in the morning, he would get up, he would pray to God before the disciples came to him, before people came to him. He set time for his day. But then I was like, God, I'm doing that. I can't get up earlier. I'm getting up at like 3 o'clock because my day right now is starting at 5. And so I can't get up any earlier and I still feel rushed. And so there was something else missing. And that's when it hit me. On the K-Love radio, they talked about busy versus rushed. And they used the story of Jesus and the storm with the disciples. And they were saying busyness is often these external storms, right? It's the things we can't control. It's what happens to us. It's our calendar. It's our schedule. It's people asking things of us. But hurried and rushed is an internal choice. It's how we respond to the busyness. And that made me want to go back to when Jesus was in the storms with the disciples. And I was like, oh, golly gee, here we go. Because it says, this is when, you remember when Jesus was like, hey, yo, people, we're going to the other side, people being the disciples. He says, on that day when evening came, I'm in Mark 4:35, Jesus said to his disciples, let's go across to the other side of the lake. So after leaving the crowd, they took him along just as he was in the boat, and other boats were with him. Now a great windstorm developed, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was nearly swamped. So let's paint the picture. Jesus said, yo, we're going to the other side. They're in the boat, in the middle. The storm comes. Storms often come in the middle of our life. In the middle of when God said we're going to this next thing, you're going to that job, you're going to that promotion, you're going to that place to live, you're going to be a light to those teenagers, you're going to be able to raise those children, you're going to be able to do this, you're going to be able to be that. It's often in the middle, not in the beginning when you just started your New Year's resolution and you're so amped and you're so excited, not in the end when you can see the line of sight. It's in the middle. It's in the middle. It's when Sexual temptation is in that relationship, and there's no line of sight to actually being married yet. It's in the middle. Right now, I'm in a 3-day water fast, and it is the middle of the water fast. This is when temptation comes, because you don't have the juice of the beginning. You're like, oh, rah, rah, I'm so excited. Adrenaline's kind of worn off, but you also don't have that line of sight near. It's in the middle that the storm comes. It's in the middle that temptation comes. It's in the middle that we feel hurried and we feel rushed in our busy schedule. Not when we first woken up and we have all the morning goodness of our restful night, not towards the end when we can say it's the last meeting of the day. It's in the middle. It's meeting 5 of 10 meetings that day. It's in the middle that the storm typically comes. So they're in the middle, in between leaving the shore and getting to the next shore, that the windstorm comes. And the disciples are basically freaking out, as we do. Right? So they freaked out. They woke him up and they said, teacher, don't you care we're about to die? Because you see, Jesus was napping. Like he was not affected by these storms. He was not affected by, he was taking a little nappy nap, as he does. And the disciples were freaking out, as we do when things come up and we're confused and we're like, are we really going to get to the other side? And we question what God initially spoke to us. And so Jesus got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, be quiet, calm down. Then the wind stopped and it was dead calm. I never noticed this before. When did Jesus wake up? When the disciples woke him up. Why did the disciples wake him up? Because there was a storm? I don't know. See, yes, there was a storm going on the outside. But you think of just being a human. When I read the Bible, I like to put myself in trying to put myself in the scene of the disciples. Like, whoa, what stupid questions would I have asked? How would I, where would my heart been? Jesus told them they're going to the other side. Jesus said that. He said, we're going to the other side. They were in the boat. A great windstorm developed. What does it mean to develop? To develop means it starts and it continues, slowly but surely. It doesn't happen all at once. It slowly develops. This storm slowly developed. I think what we don't see or read about is the storm that was developing on the inside of the disciples. The storm of doubt. The storm of fear. The storm of questioning, the storm of, oh my God, what is happening? Yes, there is this external storm, and externally it's breaking the boat. But internally is this storm of, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. I mean, if Jesus, the Son of God, told you, we're going to the other side. And then Jesus, as this storm was happening, was sleeping. Jesus told you you're going to the other side. So it's not the storm outside of you that's questioning if you're going to the other side. It's the storm that's wiling up within you concerning the storm outside of you. We consult our busy schedules and get freaked out inside. And it is that internal fear, that internal anxiety, that internal response, the response we have internally to what's going on externally that makes us doubt God, especially in the middle. Especially in the middle of our day, especially in the middle of our week, especially in the middle of our season, especially in the middle when we don't have line of sight to where we came from, but we also can't see where we're going. It's in the middle. It's in this freaky, I can't see anything middle. And that's where we question God. And that's where the enemy gets us. I once heard it put, the enemy gets us in times of transition. Like that's why gift shops are always at the end of the ride, because you're transitioning from the ride out to the next part of the amusement park. And you're tempted to buy everything because you're in a time of transition. When you're vulnerable, when you're going through a breakup, when you broke up with maybe a friend, or you're in the middle of like a job career change, you're vulnerable because you're in times of transition. When we are busy, when we're going through our day, when we're in the middle, we're in a time of transition. We can't see the initial starting point, but we also can't see the end point where we are promised to go to. We are vulnerable and we begin to consult our situation, and that causes us to have an internal shift that then causes us to doubt God. And if we can't be retracted from the value that God gave us, the enemy will try to make us so hurried that we miss it. I used to say make us so busy that we miss it. I don't think a busy schedule prevents you from seeing God in your life. I think a response to a busy schedule that leads you to feel hurried and rush causes you to miss and doubt God in your life. Jesus said, "Be quiet, calm down," to the winds and the waves after the disciples woke him up. He could have done that before they even got there. But I think he wanted to show the disciples, hey, it's not the wind and the waves that's really the problem here. It's the response. It's the conversation you had in your brain that led you to wake me up. That's the challenge. That's the issue. That's the real storm I want to calm. Jesus could have woken up as this storm was developing and just said, quiet, be still. But he didn't. He waited until the disciples woke him up, because Jesus wanted them to know the real storm, the real thing that I want you to know I have power over isn't what's going on out there. It's not your busy schedule. It's not the waves. It's not the storm of fear, of concern of what other people think of you, of the job promotion you're not sure you're going to get, of what am I going to do with your life, the answer to that question. It's not really that storm that I want you to know I have control over, because of course I have control over that. It's the storm in your heart. It's the storm you can't get to shut up when you go to bed and you have all the things you did wrong that day, all the things people want of you, all the requests, all the feedback, all the criticism, all the questions too. I don't know what I'm doing with my life, God. All the things about, God, what do I do from here? God, I can't handle this. God, I'm just one person. What else can people expect of me? All of that. The things that lie in your brain, the hypothetical scenarios that haven't even happened, but we're so good at making up in our brain, like Shakespeare making up a new play. He has control of that too. I think Jesus wanted his disciples to know, I don't just have control over the waves outside of you, but also the waves in your heart. And so as you live this busy life, which is going to be busy, you don't have to be rushed and you don't have to be hurried, because you can lean on the God that says, be quiet, calm down, to your anxiety, to your fear. I love how it says they were overwhelmed by fear and said to one another, who then is this? Even the wind and sea obey him. I love that, because it teaches me, I considered myself a very anxious and fearful person. If you're going to be scared of something in this world, fear the Lord. Fear the power of our God to cast calmness and quietness over the fear of anything else in your life. You are always going to be slave to something. You are always going to be in chains for something. Why not make it in chains for the thing that brings you ultimate freedom? which is our God, Jehovah Jireh, the protector, the redeemer, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. If you are to have a master in your life, let the God that says, I want to quiet your anxiety, quiet your fear, quiet the things you think you're not good enough for, quiet the busy schedule and the hurried perspective you had behind that busy schedule. I want to quiet that. Why not let that be the God of your life? Why not be fearful of him rather than things that are no match for him? Friend, external storms, your busy schedule, the bajillion and a half meetings you have on your calendar that day, product timelines that you're not sure if you're going to meet, a promotion you're not sure if you're going to do well, whether you're selling a product or you are the product, a relationship that you're nervous isn't going to work out, a relationship you're worried is going to work out, and you don't know what your life is going to look like when it does work out. A weird period where you don't really know what the next step is for you, whether that's what you want to do with your life, when you want to have kids, if you can have kids, where you want to live, if you think you want to live near your family or not, family dynamics, relationships you thought were going to last forever and then they didn't, external storms and internal storms. The conversations we have with ourselves about those things that are happening. Am I good enough? Will I ever be good enough? Am I going to amount to anything? Do I have to always earn the space I take up in this life? What are they going to think of me? How am I going to look that day? Am I always going to struggle with this? Will I ever be able to turn my brain off? External, the storm. Internal, the disciples' fear in their heart in response to the storm. Jesus said, be quiet, calm down, because he had authority over it all. Over it all. And he showed us that by waiting until the disciples woke him up based on their fearful response to the storm. Rather than just showing them as the storm developed, he had authority over the storm. If he wanted them to walk away that day just knowing he had authority over the sea and the wind externally, he could have woken up and done that before they got to the point where they freaked out enough to wake him up. But he waited until they woke him up so that they could know your God is a God that has authority over the fear in your heart too, the concern in your heart too, around the storms that are piling up. And he wants you. He wants you to lean on that for you. It's funny, I actually just now felt it on my heart to look up. That's why I was typing, because it says, why are you cowardly? Do you still not have faith? That's what Jesus said to the disciples after they woke him up. And he said, be quiet to the wind. Now, notice the order of operations. He didn't wake up and say, why are you waking me up? Why do you have no faith? The storm's fine. No, he quieted the storm first, because that's our God. Our God is so kind that he speaks truth in love, but he leads with love. He quiets the storm in your heart before he speaks truth. So he spoke love first. He quieted the storm, and then he spoke truth. Why are you so cowardly? Do you still not have faith? And cowardly in Hebrew means to choose self over others, comfort over Christ-likeness, and ease over sacrifice. Jesus is saying, hey, you're going to have storms in this life, but in me, you have the power to not be hurried amidst your busyness, to not be anxious amidst your storm, to sleep as I do, to lay to rest your anxiety and your fear as I model to you in this boat in the midst of your storm. He spoke love first. He calmed the storm. And then he spoke truth. Hey, friend, you don't have to be anxious in the middle of your storm. You can put to rest, lay to sleep these fears, these anxieties, this internal conversation saying you're not good enough, you're never going to measure up. You don't have to let that have life. You can live your life in me and lay to bed those fears as I model to you sleeping in this storm. Oh, I love our God, because he doesn't just speak truth and he doesn't just speak love. He speaks both. He speaks in love and then speaks in truth. Be quiet, calm down. Then the wind stopped and it was dead calm. And he said to them, why are you cowardly? Do you still not have faith? Your truth will always lead you back to the awe of Jesus, just as it did with the disciples. Who then is this? Even the wind and sea obey him. Truth and love in Jesus will lead you to want to obey Jesus, because even the wind outside of you and inside of you obey Jesus. Dear Lord, I pray for the friend who is struggling with something right now that they don't even have words for. It's just this thing on their heart that's so heavy. They don't even know if there's vocabulary for it. It sits there, it nags at them day after day. It's like, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? And they don't have the answers. And it's not necessarily their busy schedule or their filled schedule or their lack of a busy schedule that's freaking them out. It's the internal conversation that's going on in their heart around their circumstances. Lord, you're the God that reminds us you're in our boat. You're in our boat. We can invite you into our boat. And we can wake you up if we're freaking out. And you'll remind us you have authority over the things we're freaking out about. Or we can look to you as an example and lay to rest our fear and say, I don't feel enough, but you call me enough. I don't feel chosen, but you call me chosen. I don't feel valuable, but you call me valuable. I don't feel like I have it all figured out, but you never asked that of me. You asked me to seek first the kingdom. You asked me to seek first you. And so, Lord, I pray in confidence that you give everyone tuning in today that next right step, to look to you, to give them tangible, practical things to do in this time, because there are storms around us, Lord. A lot of the ones inside of us, way bigger than the ones outside of us. And you know that. You know that. And you sent your son to this earth to live the life that we could not, die the death that we could deserved, to be recipients of the life we did not deserve. Thank you, Jesus, for what you've done, but also for being in our boat as we navigate in this middle of life, just as the disciples were in the middle of the lake when this storm came. Earth is kind of that middle for us. Like God knew us before we were born at our inception. Heaven is ultimately where we want to go, but earth, we're in this weird middle. We're in the middle of the lake right now, and there's storms all around us. And Jesus, I pray we just keep our eyes on you, and we take your word as a lamp unto our feet, and we see you as an example that we can lay to bed our anxiety and our fear as the storms rage on. And we can have quiet and a calm mind, not because of who we are, but because of who you are and who's in our boat. And I hope that this blessed you and encouraged you, reminded you that God gave you a unique light, and it is your job to shine it in this world because we need you to. That being said, if you were blessed by this message and you can think of anybody else that also needs this type of encouragement, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment. It helps me out a lot and helps this message that I do believe God gave my heart to share with the world gets out. I hope you have such an amazing rest of your day.